into those NFL 100 rankings. So an interesting name that popped up for 49ers fans everywhere. Everyone is enjoy. Everyone is a buzz. Jimmy Garoppolo at number 43. So nationally, Jimmy Garoppolo has been, mixed feelings. Even for yourself, Grant, I know you take a lot of heat too on the Jimmy Garoppolo fans. I'm one of them. We may disagree a little bit on this potentially because I see Jimmy Garoppolo as a top 10 quarterback. According to that list, he's 8. Where do you have him?
That is really interesting. So the players put him at 8, but it seems like the national media put him almost at 15. Mm-hmm. And I would think that 15 is a little harsh. Like, I'm the harsh guy locally. I'm the guy who says good Jimmy and bad Jimmy. But even I wouldn't say 15. I think that's a little harsh. I think he's closer to 8 than that. The only thing – look, I'm not going to argue with his peers because the players know the game better than I do. All I'm saying is he has less than 2 full seasons as a starter. It's a little early to really give him a ranking like that. But what are they going to do, not rank him? What are you going to do? So I get it. I just feel like he's in a volatile stage in his career. If something happens and he has a down year next year, and I don't expect he will, but if he does, then all of a sudden he could plummet out of the top 100 entirely, all because he doesn't have much of a track record. So, yeah, he's coming off a great year. Good for him. He still has a lot to prove. I mean, next year he could be 15 in the league, or he could be out of the top 100. He still has a lot to prove.
I think that just shows the respect, though, that Jimmy does tend to have with his peers just in general. Like, if you look at the Niners locker room, like how many people have jumped to his defense, whether it be George Kittle, whether it be Kyle Juszczyk. I think Kyle was the one talking about him in that video as well, the package that they made up. Jimmy Garoppolo definitely does command a lot of leadership points with that team, and I do think that that's one of his defining characteristics. As you mentioned, like the national media had him at 15. We talked about the Madden ratings. They had him at 83, 20 for Chris Sims. I was like, is Ryan Tannehill really a better quarterback than Jimmy?
Exactly. Let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. Where did Matt Stafford rank in the top 100? Was he even in the top 100?
I don't believe so. I think that might have been impacted, obviously, because of
see, that's what I'm talking about, man. Yeah. Like, Matt Stafford has been in the league like 12 years. He's a hell of a quarterback, but he's been in the Lions, and he's gotten hurt. So he's not in the top 100, but Jimmy is because he's played a year and a half, and he's coming off a good year. Look at it this way. If the Niners called the Lions today and said, we'll trade you Jimmy Garoppolo for Matt Stafford, what would the Lions say?
Well, I mean, I think that they would probably take that deal. I mean,
maybe.
I mean,
look at it this way.
They've shown
this way. If they traded spots last year, how many games? And Stafford was the Niners quarterback, and Jimmy was the Lions quarterback. How many games would the Niners win, and how many games would the Lions win?
It's hard to do better than a 13-3 season. That's for sure. The thing, I have my questions about Matthew Stafford, and maybe, yes, he's been in a poor organization his entire career. They have shown little ability to help him out throughout that time. Coaching staffs have been a mess as well. But he did have one of the greatest wide receivers potentially of all time. We'll say that,
Never had a running game, never really had a defense, but he did have Calvin Johnson.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's tough. I would have wanted more from Matthew Stafford at this point in his career just because he is, like you said, he is an above-average talent. He is a fantastic talent. If you look at just like NFL GMs, I believe, what was it? The Athletics rankings came out with NFL GMs tier 1 quarterbacks, tier 2 quarterbacks just a couple days ago. And I believe most NFL GMs still had him as like bottom end tier 1 quarterback, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. See, to me, I consider Garoppolo a tier 3 quarterback. Tier 1 is Mahomes, Breeze, Wilson. Tier 2 is like Brady, Rodgers, Stafford, arguably, or maybe not. And then tier 3 is Garoppolo, Cousins, Carr, maybe Stafford. They're like the good quarterbacks, but quarterbacks who definitely have stinkers, maybe once a month. They're not necessarily the most consistent, but what they're on, they're as good as a tier 2 or as good as a tier 2.
Okay, so what does Jimmy need to do to change the narrative? What does he need to do to fix things? Because I think if he could just find himself somewhere in that MVP discussion argument, just at least one vote, give me one vote, and I think that would be a huge step for him.
Well, cutting down the turnovers are important, but that's not going to get him the MVP. If he cuts down the turnovers from 17, including fumbles, to like 10, now he's more in the Kirk Cousins range because Kirk Cousins is just a little bit more conservative or protectful of the football. But that's not enough to get to the MVP. To me, it's very clear what Jimmy Garoppolo needs to do, and I think he can do it. I mean, I hope he can do it. I don't really care if he can do it, but I'm thinking he might. he needs to get the arm strength back.
Mhm.
When he first came to the Niners, he had some serious zip on the ball. I thought he did. I mean, he's never really had great feel for the deep ball, but that's not really an arm strength thing. That's a timing thing with your receivers. I'm talking about zip on intermediate passes down the field, 15 yards to the sideline. He could really drive it, I thought, before he tore his ACL. Because to drive those throws, you need to plant your front leg pretty aggressively, and that's your surgically repaired knee. So I felt in 2019, he wasn't really following through. He was really using his arm and his wrist and babying his front leg, because in football, you plant it hard, it could get rolled up on, you could tear it again. So I get it. It was his first year back from the ACL. There's a mental hurdle that every quarterback and player needs to get over. It's been an extra year. Now he's at that point now where it's like the arm strength is going to come back now or it never will. And I think that's part of what the Niners are looking at. If it comes back and he has zip and he can start going down the field more like he did in 2017, then that's their guy for long term, and they'll give him the extension. But if not, if he's really limited to these shorter passes and everything has to be about yards after the catch, then I think, and they like get bounced early from the playoffs, then the Niners might think, well, what could we do with a quarterback like Matt Stafford, who really does have a gun? What could we do with a quarterback who just has a little bit more zip? So I'm not saying that Jimmy is like screwed. I think he can, a year removed from the ACL, he should be able to show some more zip. And if not, then things get weird. But I think that's what we're looking for this year. A little bit more oomph on us, a little bit more mustard on those passes.
I think where people have kind of like had their disagreements with you is just because, I mean, you've said like he's not Steve Young, you know, and some people have taken offense to that. And, you know, with that said, Grant, it's great that you actually got to see Steve Young. Maybe I love Jimmy a little bit more because I come from the generation that was asking for Sean Hill to start over Alex Smith.
Fair enough. Good point. Yeah, I grew up with Steve Young, and to me, like 7-year-old me thinks that's the way the Niners should be all the time. And I've never really understood why they've gotten worse since then. But you didn't grow up with that, so it's a different context.
Yeah, I look at my dad and I'm like, why did you raise me into this pain and misery that until pre-Harbaugh, it was a rough time. It was some rough goes for many a years. So, you know, I think my first memory was that Jeff Garcia comeback against the Giants. That was about it. That was like the highlight at quarterback. First memory of like watching Niners games.
Of course. I remember that. I loved that game. I remember I was hanging out with my cousins, Michael and Barry, that day. Was that 2002? I was 14.
It was.
And they came over to my house. They're from Virginia, so they don't care about the Niners. And I was a big fan at the time. And they just wanted to watch football with me. So the Niners were down big. Mm-hmm. So we were like, man, screw this game. Let's leave. So they were in college at the time, or a little bit older. We went to Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley to get like a piece of pizza and just kill time. And then we catch a TV and we see the game's tied. So we rush home and see it. We missed, I want to say, like the half, like the second and third quarter, because we thought the game was over and came back to watch Jeff Garcia, who is one of the most underrated players in 49ers history. For some reason, he gets no credit, but he was handpicked by Bill Walsh. And I still feel like he reached a level that Jimmy Garoppolo has yet to attain, but has yet to attain. So let's give some respect to Jeff Garcia.
Hey, some Jeff Garcia love. Wasn't expecting to have that today, but you know, Jeff, you're well represented and loved by the Slumpbuster Podcast, and
that's right.
Right here.